It's our pleasure to welcome now John McKay, President and CEO of the Mississippi Manufacturers Association. John, good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gerard.
So a lot of policy coming out of Washington that certainly could affect us here in the state of Mississippi in the manufacturing sector in particular. A high degree of focus has been placed on manufacturing with the tariffs and so forth. That's all about production, where it's produced, and what the price of the tariff is on that as it moves across the borders. What's going on here in Mississippi that might affect? What projects are you able to share with us from a manufacturing perspective that might or might not be affected here?
Yeah. Well, let me start by saying, things have been going really well in the manufacturing space. Obviously, the Tate Reeves administration has been laser focused on economic growth and development, and especially focused on manufacturing. The latest example is the announcement out of Grenada, which is the Modine expansion, which, and you think about this as a continuum, those data center projects require extremely high-end heating and cooling systems, and Modine specializes in that, and so the expansion up there is a direct relationship to those projects.
Well, that's some of the outgrowth that we thought would happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you're seeing that on the ground there. As far as the broader tariff and trade policy situation, that's a tough one for manufacturers, and it really does depend on what sector you're in, what your inputs are for your products. I mean, that's the big thing that a lot of people don't naturally associate with what we do here in Mississippi, which is we make a lot of stuff, but that stuff requires a lot of component parts and pieces and input material, and a lot of that is sourced internationally. And the way that the tariffs have rolled out, I would say that there wasn't enough certainty in the initial rollout of what we were looking at going forward. And some of that's settled out, obviously, but it's that uncertainty, and with your business background, that certainty for business is really what allows them to make those long-term capital investments. No doubt. And that's critical to grow manufacturing. And so that's one of the things that we're working, obviously, with our congressional delegation and the administration to make sure that we can kind of put some guardrails around what we're looking at and make the right long-term play.
Yeah. The ability to have some understanding and clarity about the future is essential to making big business decisions, especially when they require long-term commitments and investments in risk-taking. If you understand the landscape of the future, you're better prepared to make those decisions.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. And it's really simple things like timing. And some people don't think about that is, a manufacturer might order 100,000 units of an input that they need, and they place that order a month before the announcement of tariffs, but the shipping date is really what triggers the tariff and when it arrives on the shores of the United States. And that has really, from a financial planning aspect, really put some folks in a bind where they're either trying to work out with their trading partners who eats that cost. Some you'll see, especially on the wholesale side, is they're adding a sort of tariff surcharge to instead of embedding that into the price right now. They want to see how things shake out, and they're sort of adding that as a line item. There's a lot of things going on right now, and we're trying to help our members understand that and work within the system and make sure they're connected to the resources they need to do it effectively.
Sure. Have you received or aware of anything related to any news, any rumblings related to perhaps companies looking to reshore into the United States, considering Mississippi as a home?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's obviously part of the long-term goal and the outcomes that the administration's looking to accomplish. And I think those are laudable goals.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing some immediate investments in some of the things like, steel manufacturing and those sorts of activities that were high priority parts of this tariff regime. Some of our manufacturers in Mississippi, I'm thinking, some of the furniture manufacturing and things like that, where you could actually bring some of that over. But it's funny, I was just talking to one of our members in the furniture space. Unfortunately, there are some components of their material they use that because of EPA regulations, they cannot be produced in the United States, essentially. I mean, it's effectively outlawed because of the type of material and the process that's used in that material.
I got you.
So it's a really tough balancing act to where sometimes you really rely on those international partners.
It's interesting you say that because you mentioned that. Mike McCormick, of course, who is the president of Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation, he was talking about something similar, that some of the food
Fertilizer.
products. Yeah, the food products that we bring into this country that are produced in other countries, they use farming products.
Yep.
Right, that are banned in this country, but they use them there, and then they send the food in here and we eat it.
That's right. So, yeah, and that's the thing that I wish to convey to the broader audience is how complicated these supply chains and these networks are, and they've developed over decades. And we can have the debate of is that a good thing or a bad thing, and how much of that really could we do here. But I will just be here to tell you there are some things that just probably are never going to come back on these shores. Yeah. And there's a myriad of reasons why, but those are the things that we need to look at strategically. We also need to punish the bad actors. And I'll signify China has a long track record, IP theft, illegal dumping, all of these things, these trade practices that we identify. We could target that instance right there, but I think you're going to need allies in the region to make up the slack for some of the production because it's just not going to be able to come back immediately. Yeah, and it's not something you can snap your fingers and a factory stands up either, so that also is a problem. In the meantime, if the tariffs stay in place, we really haven't seen the impact of those in consumer pricing just yet. I mean, they're only a month and a couple of weeks old. Right. Since so-called Liberation Day. So I think that's coming. And it's been reported, at least, that lots of even manufacturers had sort of increased their inventory for materials to get ahead of those tariffs, right? That's 100% the case. You saw kind of a spike in inventories in the front part of the year, that first quarter. I think firms, you're not going to see those prices fluctuate until some of that inventory burns out. And it obviously, again, depends on the kind of the nature of what you're putting together. But when that inventory burns out and there are significant tariffs in place, ultimately that's going to trickle down to the consumer. It's just a question of when. Yeah. And then, on the flip side of that, can the administration speed up some of its negotiations with the European Union and some of our Asian trading partners and our South American partners? If you get those in place in time, maybe you don't see as dire a shift in pricing. Yeah, you could be right. And I think that's what they're counting on, the administration. Yes. My guess is leveraging their position in that regard. The tax provisions that certainly would apply greatly to the manufacturing industry. Immediate expensing, right, of factory costs. Yep. We've never seen anything like that. I mean, essentially stand up a factory and write the whole thing off in the year you did it. Yep. And that was one of the key components of the original Trump tax plan, the TCJA. Yeah. When it was implemented, the way that they, the trickery in the budget, they work on a 10-year horizon. And what they did with that provision is starting in year 6, they started to phase out. Yeah. So we're getting to the end of that phase out. We're like at 50% now or something, right? Yeah. We're getting down. And so having that go back to the 100% expensing is huge. There's an R&D tax credit embedded in that tax package. I forgot about that. That's another huge one. And so we've been very active along with our National Association and other partners to really push to have those key pieces part of the eventual budget and tax proposal that makes it through. Well, I mean, these are all great pro-growth policies. These certainly incentivize investment in new plant and equipment, no doubt about it. Could be brand new factories or just expansion of existing ones. Either way, you get to write it off. Well, and I've got to give credit to our legislative leaders. They saw the impacts of that on the federal level, and they said, well, why can't we do that on the state level? And, Lieutenant Governor Hoseman and Speaker White and Governor Reeves said, well, we can do that on the state level, and they implemented that, and it doesn't have a sunset. So we here at the state ago, right? That's right. Yeah, there was what we call a reconciling item between your state and your federal return, which was crazy to have to start with. Yeah. I think all that's good news. Now, we also have to be considerate of the fact, you just pointed it out, that
unfortunately, these provisions expire in 4 years.
Yes.
So we're playing the budget reconciliation trickery again to make sure the parliamentarian in the Senate says, yeah, we'll let you pass that with a simple majority.
We got to get over that hurdle, that's for sure.
Man, it's incredible. If you can hang around, I want to visit with you about any updates on the merger.
Sure.
The combination with MEC and BIPAC.
Yeah, would love to.
Coming right back with John McKay. He's the president and the CEO of Mississippi Manufacturers Wealth Studio. We've got John McKay, president and CEO of the Mississippi Manufacturers Association. So before we went to break, you guys were in here not too long ago.
That's right.
Scott and Derek, you representing the various organizations, Mississippi Economic Council, BIPAC, Mississippi Manufacturers Associations. You guys announced on our air here that you were planning to combine in some way. What's the status of that?
Yeah, no. It's a really exciting project, and I have to give credit to Scott and Derek both. We've been having conversations about this for a long time, and starting really at the beginning of this calendar year, we took it to the next level and engaged our leadership and really got the buy-in that we needed through our memberships. And we're pretty far down the road. I'll be honest with you. We have, moved to the phase where we are moving from the theoretical to the practical and starting to put meat on the bones of a governance structure and how do you bring all these people that have worked together for years and years and years under one umbrella and move forward to really, the entire goal is to be a more effective organization for the entire business community. Instead of having three different organizations, different dues, everybody's got to invest in those organizations, put it all under one umbrella. And the great thing about that model is it's not new. This is something that over 30 other states around the country have a combined entity instead of standalone organizations. And so, we have R&D in our industry in the association world, and it's called rip off and duplicate. We can look at each other and share our best practices and really, not even start from square one. We can really hit the ground running just by looking at those successful models around the country. And so we're starting to do that. And really the target point right now is really in the fall of this year to have a final new organization, and the ultimate goal is to hit the ground day one of the new legislative session in 2026. New name, new organization, whole structure in place, ready to go.
Now, each of these three organizations, I assume, have boards of directors?
They do.
And all three have agreed that this is in their best interest?
They have. Now, obviously we're not to the final stage yet. They will all three ultimately have to have a final sign-off of combining staffs and all
once
assets.
You see what that roadmap looks like.
Absolutely. And so we've really we laid out that roadmap in the very beginning, and we have some outside consulting and legal help that's working through all this with us. But what's so exciting is, early conversations, we were trying to think of all of the impediments, all of the what naysayers might think. There has been very little of that. There's been such an excitement really of the possibilities. And some people even quietly behind the scenes are saying, I've been talking about this for 20 years. It's that kind of thing.
I haven't heard anything negative.
No, it really has been eye-opening to see the excitement and really the desire to have this in place, not only from our membership, but quite frankly from political leaders. You saw Jason White last October at Hobnob at MEC's big event say from the stage how excited he was to have a new entity like this to work with he and his colleagues.
Yeah, I remember that, and I was about to say that I've heard positive feedback from lawmakers as well. So and you guys, for the most part, there's a lot of overlap.
There is, and it's funny. We've mapped out our membership and sort of done a Venn diagram, and there's probably about between a third and a half of overlap between the three organizations. And so that's a significant portion of our membership that already exists under essentially one umbrella, because on a policy front, we agree 95% of the time. I think you've just seen organizations who historically have focused on just different areas. And so by combining all of that, you can do all of those things and just have it under a singular umbrella.
Makes sense. Yeah. All right, so we got the legislature in session. I think they just recessed, subject to recall. Anything you're looking for, expecting?
Not too terribly much. I mean, I think as far as drama is concerned, this is probably going to lack a lot of drama because as I understand it, the budgets have essentially been agreed to. And so there's some minor things that they might be debating. So it's not going to be heavy on that. But for my purposes, I'm very focused on something that's very important to my membership, which is workforce development.
Okay.
So the budget of Accelerate Mississippi, for instance, and the career coaching program and some of the things that we're trying to do in that space, working with our community colleges to stand up certain programs that accelerate the training for some of these high-value career paths. One thing that we've been very good at in Mississippi is investing in some of these programs. What we've done a poor job at is actually tracking the outcomes. So what we through the State Workforce Investment Board, which oversees Accelerate, we've been very focused on trying to get those metrics front and center. And it's not that we want to point a finger at anybody, but what gets measured gets done. Yeah. And if we're not tracking the outcomes, we're missing the ball.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
If we need 400 new industrial maintenance technicians 2 years from now, we better get on it now to really increase those enrollment numbers, but then really increase those graduation numbers.
Yeah,
that's the key.
Yeah. Okay.
So Accelerate's a big one. There are some transportation programs that we're very much in favor of making sure they're funded. So the Emergency Road and Bridge program that is very critical to our local network. We've got a multimodal fund which targets your rail and ports and airports. That's very critical that we started a couple years ago. You go down the list. I think we've talked about it before. Environmental permitting. It's not a very sexy topic, but it's critical to big projects to get those permits in place in time to get the doors open. And if we don't have a fully funded DEQ, that's a problem. So, working with those agencies to try to understand their budget needs and to convey that to the legislators, that's sort of the stuff that we do this time of year.
I've just heard anecdotally that's a huge impediment to getting shovels in the ground and getting these projects underway. Just dealing with some of the permitting and the EPA stuff.
Yeah, so, obviously
DEQ.
The EPA overall regs, those are not much we can affect here. Yeah. But I will say that DEQ has been such a valuable partner in making sure that if there's projects on the table, that they're ready to go. And sometimes they'll even shift projects around in their schedule to accommodate that. But at the same time, if we don't make sure it's funded on a regular basis at the adequate level, that's going to start slipping. And that's been one of the advantages for Mississippi over some of our competitor states. They have a much more kind of regulatory framework that impedes some of that progress. We need to stay on the top on that one.
I agree, and I've heard that just being involved in economic development, that's a huge factor in their decision.
Yep.
Is the streamlined permitting process that we have in the state. But you're right, if we don't fund that properly and keep that with the resources, ensure it has all the resources and assets it needs, then we may lose that edge and advantage, and that would be detrimental to the state.
Absolutely.
No doubt about it. And overall, though, your members are pretty optimistic about the economy?
Yeah. They're, I would say, again, just kind of the looking at the national framework and some of the tariff and trade issues, one thing that I have noticed, and I think this applies to the economic development space, is you're just kind of seeing a stationary outlook right now. They're just holding back. They're going to kind of wait for the dust to settle, see where they are. And then I think you're going to see a real engagement and activity uptick. Okay. But right now, we're sort of in that just holding pattern.
Yeah.
And that makes me a little nervous. I mean, it's one of those things I definitely understand. We talked about the investment strategies earlier. I think that will really pick up in the summer and the fall if we can get some clarity. But the longer the uncertainty goes on, the more nervous I'm going to get.
Yeah, I think everybody is.
That's right. So, but overall, manufacturing is looking really good. We, it's over 15% of our GDP, close to that amount in our total employment in the state. It pays wages about $10,000 more per capita. I mean, it's the numbers in manufacturing really show you why it's such a critical focal point of policymakers, because it really does bring dollars to the state and boost our economy.
And plus the governor's focus on site development, I think, will pay off as well. We were up there a couple of weeks ago, the big announcement up in the Golden Triangle with the Link and the Cinco site. What a beautiful piece of property that is. You got to believe there's some great manufacturing organizations that are looking to make that their home.
Absolutely. Well, and that also highlights it's a team sport. Those local developers are so critical.
That's right.
And MDA coming in and being sort of the rainmaker and the deal developer, and that is such a good model, and we've really run with that, and that's what we need to keep a focus on.
Yeah, I totally agree. We have had a lot of success. We just need to keep the momentum going.
Yep. I'm excited.
John, thanks for coming in and really enjoyed the conversation and the insight about Mississippi's manufacturing industry, so critical to the success of our state. Appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me.
John McKay, President, CEO of the Mississippi Manufacturers Association, has been our guest on Middays. We're coming right back.